Hey folks, we're back with you. I came back as I promised I would. We're going to talk really quickly about how to counteract a smear campaign against you. Now, I want you to check out my video on not Facebook. Oh my gosh, I can't talk tonight. Like I said before, we're having brain fog today. I want you to check out my video on YouTube, rather. On Dominique Does Life, you will see my very first video that I have ever posted, and the title is something like how to respond to or how to deal with narcissists and sociopaths. Now, this works well for anybody who's targeting you, not just dealing with narcissists and sociopaths, but I do want to humbly suggest, because I want to really get this, kind of drill this into your head, if you will, as it's been drilled into my head, that if you're experiencing problems with somebody, if you're experiencing targeting of any kind, it's very likely that you're dealing with a narcissist or a sociopath. Now, we have a little bit more time to discuss things during this particular podcast, so we're going to get a little bit more in depth. So here's the deal. With problem personality types in general, narcissists, sociopaths, and other cluster Bs included, these folks don't always present like certain narcissists that are papering our newspapers all the time for the last few months, if you get my drift. They don't always present just like people like that person. They don't always present, like somebody who wants constant attention and constant praise and constant, just to constantly put themselves out there and to get some kind of a narcissistic supply or cluster B supply from it. So oftentimes we're dealing with people who are very sly, who are very covert. That's a psychological terminology, covert narcissists. And in fact, there is a big overlap between covert narcissists and sociopaths. So oftentimes we're dealing with people who don't present as out and out, outright malignant narcissists or sociopaths. Even when they're very malignant, they don't always appear that way. So please don't think that just because you're not dealing with somebody who is very outright and very overt about it, that you're not dealing with a disordered individual. Your instincts serve you very well, and if you feel that you're dealing with a disordered individual, you probably are. And I do want you to go ahead and look up the diagnostic criteria for narcissism and for sociopathy, because you're going to see a checklist, a behavior checklist, and you're going to be able to, again, without diagnosing, you're going to be able to look over that behavioral checklist and say, does this person present with, say, 25 out of 30 of these major diagnostic criteria? Boy, can I not talk tonight. You're going to look at the sheet and you're going to say, okay, this person, say, presents with 27 out of the 30 diagnostic criteria, and you're going to say, well, gosh, they seem to exhibit these behaviors 80% of the time, for instance. And that's going to tell you that they're very likely to be somebody who's on that cluster B spectrum. A sociopath or a narcissist. So do keep that in mind. It's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're being targeted, it's not you. If you're being bullied, it's not you. Let me give you a quick rundown of some of the professions that folks with problem personality types gravitate towards. Okay. And if you hear of somebody who has more than one of these professions in their background, I really want you to take this as a very serious sign that they may well have a real issue, a real problem, that they may be a disordered person. So So again, just to kind of bolster your confidence and to support you and to support your conclusions, and so that you don't feel crazy, here's a quick rundown of the jobs, the careers that these people gravitate towards. The hero professions, for one. So firefighter, ambulance driver, first responder, like fire and rescue in some capacity, even if they're not an actual firefighter. A doctor, ER doctor in particular, surgeon. And then we've got professions like lawyer, politician, finance. And I'm not talking about just like working at a bank. I'm talking about being in finance, being in investing, something like that. I do apologize for the irritating background sound. There's been somebody driving around and around and around the block in an old car that the muffler seems to be falling out of. Maybe they're taking a nice Friday joyride. So I hope they're enjoying themselves, and I hope that you're able to hear what I'm saying despite their enjoyable Friday night ride. So I want you to keep in mind that the professions I just listed are very, very conducive to sociopaths, narcissists, histrionics, and borderlines, but narcissists and sociopaths in particular. And if you know somebody who has, let's say, 2 or more of these careers in their background, that's a real red flag. And I don't want to say that any politician or lawyer who has become a politician rather is a bad person or is definitely a sociopath or a narcissist. But if you're looking at somebody, for instance, who's been in finance and now they're in law, they were a doctor, now they're a politician, they were a lawyer, now they're a politician, there could well be a problem. If you're looking at somebody who has kind of a dead gaze, a dead shark look in their eye, and they fit those descriptions, definitely this person is very likely to fall on that cluster B spectrum. So no, you're not imagining things. It's not just you. Now let's move on to how to handle things. Now most of the time, even somebody who's an overt narcissist or who's a sociopath with overt narcissist tendencies is not going to outright, in public say, hey, you bitch, or hey, you jerk, or something like that. They're going to be a little bit more passive about it. They're going to be more passive-aggressive, I should say, about it. They're going to say things like, oh, honey, are you sure you want to order that? Do you know what's in that? You don't like that. Let's get you something else. So let's start there. Let's say that you're out with somebody, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a romantic partner, maybe it's somebody who is you're working with them and you're at a client dinner or a work dinner. You might say something like, gosh, that's an interesting thing to say. What an interesting thing that is to say. I wonder how you know what I like. It seems like you might have forgotten that I was a vegetarian when you suggested the lamb chops, rare with little mint jelly or whatever, Gosh, it sounds like you might be suggesting that I eat meat. Well, you know that I'm a vegan, and so that's interesting to me. I wonder why you'd suggest that. Never come out and outright say, hey, what do you mean? I'm a vegetarian. How dare you suggest that? Say, gosh, what an interesting thing it is that you just said. I wonder why you forgot that I was a vegetarian. You must be feeling stressed right now. So you need to play back to them in a very passive-aggressive way. And honestly, if you speak to somebody like this in a straightforward manner, that really is just good communication. You're not, there's no sentiment behind what you're saying that has kind of a screw off vibe like it is with them. When they're making kindly, friendly suggestions to you, there's always this vibe of, you idiot, you don't know what you're doing, and so I'm going to have to do this for you, or how dare you say that in front of me, or something. So there's no hostility behind what you're saying. So I don't want you to feel bad about saying things that could be construed as passive-aggressive. I also want you to keep in mind that no matter what the topic is that's being discussed, no matter where you're at, or what you're doing, or with whom, this person, this disordered individual, is always playing to an audience. they're never going to say something that is just meant for you. Even when you're in private with them, truly, they're never going to say something that's meant to stay with you. They're going to say something to you that they hope to God you will repeat and repeat with vigor and repeat with, anger or what have you. So here's what I want you to do. When they say things to you in private, I know it's hard and you want to get it out there and you want to, get it out of you because it feels bad and it feels, awful. But I want you to keep it to yourself. Discuss it with a therapist or a qualified coach if you have to. But keep it to yourself. Don't discuss it with other people, particularly other people that you both know. You need to keep it to yourself. You need to just, I know it's hard, but you need to draw this boundary with yourself. You need to say, I'm going to choose to keep this to myself. I am not going to talk about this person, and I need for you to really stick to that. When you think you're being targeted, I know that your instinct is to lash out at this person or to clap back at them, but don't. You have to keep it to yourself. Don't tell everybody that you're being targeted by this specific person. Now, it's not a bad thing to just vaguely put it out there into the ether that you're being targeted, as long as this person isn't trying to guess like you or other people to make them think you're crazy. Then you might actually come off like a crazy person. But if this person is saying things about you that don't include you possibly being mentally unwell, if they're saying things like, that you're cheating on them or that you're not a nice person or what have you, then I think it's perfectly fine for you to just vaguely mention and put it out there that you're being targeted. That way this person is going to have to mind their P's and Q's. They're going to realize, because this is a game that they play pretty much professionally. They're professional manipulators. They should literally say that on their resumes. They should put it on their LinkedIn pages, because that's what they are. But this is their job. This is who they are. This is what they are. This is what they're about. This is them 24/7. They literally sit around plotting about other people all day, every day. They sit around gossiping. They sit around making up stories. They sit around plotting about folks all day and targeting folks literally all day, every day. So I want you to keep that in mind. You're not going to beat them at their own game, so you've got to play a different game. Make them switch up their rules and play by yours. So what you're going to do is make sure that you're aware of the audience. As I mentioned, even when you're alone with this person, there is an audience. The sooner you come to that understanding, the better, my friends. It's imperative. There's always an audience. I know that when they post vague things on social media about going through a hard time or having a hard time with their partner, if you're their partner, or what have you, I know you're going to be really tempted to respond to that. Either don't respond at all if you can't control yourself, or if you can, you're more than welcome to respond with something like, gosh, what an interesting, again, this is what you should pretty much always lead with. Wow, what an interesting thing you just said. Gosh, what an interesting thing it is that you just said. Wow, how interesting. Huh, that's interesting, something like that. Always include the term interesting, or that's don't ever say odd, just that's interesting. Well, that's an intriguing thing that you just said. Clearly, the implication is that's a really crappy thing that you just said, but you don't need to use those terms. You need to be the one, unfortunately, who stays above the fray, who is above reproach. And so if somebody says something on social media, for instance, that's in vague reference to you, you might, and they'll play that game with you because it's very passive-aggressive. It's a passive-aggressive thing to do. So don't be surprised and don't freak out and respond in anger. Expect this, please. Expect it. And you can respond, if you're able to control yourself, by saying something like, gosh, what an interesting thing it is you just said. This is the first time hearing of it. I wonder why you feel you're having problems in your relationship. Well, if you'd like to talk about that in a one-on-one setting, I'm here for you. Right? Doesn't that sound reasonable? You didn't just come out and accuse that person of, being a jerk, or you didn't say, oh, I know you're talking about me. What do you mean we're having problems? You just said, well, that's interesting, and gosh, that's the first I've heard of this. Well, that's really quite intriguing, and I wonder why you've just said that. Well, I'd be happy to talk it over with you because this is the first that I've heard of it. Same goes for if you're having problems with someone at work. Oftentimes in public meetings or public gatherings, and again on like social media pages and that sort of thing, they're going to try to ambush you. Don't respond emotionally. I've gotten to the point in my life where when I see things like that, I just laugh. I don't feel emotional about it at all. I just think, what a pathetic person. Oh my gosh, they have been spending a lot of time thinking about me when I've been getting on with my life. How sad for them. So I want you to really try to look at it that way and switch up your point of view, because it's really important that you don't get emotional. So when things like this happen, and when you inevitably hear the accusation and that passive-aggressive thing be said about you, when you hear the gotcha question or the gotcha statement, you should remain very calm. Don't address the person who said it at all. Address the audience. You can seem like you're addressing the person who said it, but I'd like for you to be addressing the audience at all times. Be very aware of that fact. So you could say something like, wow, again, what an interesting thing, or what an intriguing thing that is that you just said. This is the first that I'm hearing about it. Like I've used this example before in my videos, so forgive me if you've watched my other videos, but you could say something if they accuse you of not doing a project or not doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, and you're at a work meeting, or you're with the boss, or you're with other employees or clients. You could say something like, gosh, what an interesting / intriguing thing that is that you just said. That's really quite perplexing to me. That's confusing to me. Now, you can use the word confusing, but you don't want to use it too often because that may make it seem like you're just not with it. So you can say perplexing or confusing, say once or twice throughout that short conversation, but I really want you to stick with words like interesting and intriguing. Interesting. When they accuse you of not doing the work you needed to do, you could say, so here, don't even address what they said, just say, what an interesting thing it is you just said, and then move on to highlight your strengths and your positive qualities. You could say something like, well, so I'm glad that so-and-so brought the subject of this project up. So here's what I did on this project. I'm really excited about it, and here's what I plan on implementing moving forward. So I'm really excited about what I've done with this project. Hey, thanks, Roger, or whoever the guy is that's bothering you, for bringing it up. I'm so glad you brought up this subject. I'm really looking forward to serving our clients, and I really know this is going to help. And I know, Roger, that you'll be on board with me on this. And so I'm really looking forward to working with you and partnering with you on this. Now, obviously, that's going to take the wind out of his sails, because you didn't respond in emotion. You didn't respond to his accusation at all. You just said, here's what I did with the project. I'm glad you brought the subject up. You kept it positive. You were gently inquisitive about, that wrong thing that he just said. Well, gosh, what an interesting thing it is that you just said that. Wow, what a perplexing thing to say. Well, here's what I did. Here are my strengths. Here's why I did this. Here's how I did this. Here's how I plan on implementing some positive changes in the future for our business. And I'm really excited about it. And Roger, I know you're going to be on board with me about it. So I'm really looking forward to working with you on it. Let's get down to brass tacks. And obviously that leaves Roger nowhere to go, right? It leaves him nowhere to go. He can't say, well, I'm not going to work with you on it. And you know what? If he is a narcissist, he well might say that. And you have just manipulated him into a breakdown in public. You have manipulated him into showing himself in public by simply being positive and proactive. And there is nothing wrong with that. So I think it's very good to, again, keep that audience in mind. Keep in mind the fact that you need to talk to these people, narcissists, sociopaths, and cluster Bs, like they're children. State and restate facts. State and restate a very basic case that you're making. State and restate the fact that you're calling what they had said into question. Always state and restate that, wow, what an intriguing thing it is that you just said. I wonder why you've chosen to say that. Always use the terminology that I've just used. The terminology centering around choice, that they have made a choice to behave this way, is key. Now, if somebody is really going after you, really targeting you, whether it be at work, whether it be in your personal life, with family, in your romantic life, what have you, it's very possible for you to mitigate the damage. You don't want to keep someone like this around if you can avoid it, but it's very possible to mitigate the damage. And when you continue to respond like a mature adult, this person is going to know that they have nowhere to go with you. You're not a good target. You're not going to respond in anger. You're not going to cry and run out of the room. You're going to be the adult in the room, and they're going to be the one that's kind of left in the dust. So, they're going to be aware that they're going to have to kind of abandon you as a target, and they may even be afraid to work with you in future because they know you're not going to fool with them. You're not going to fool around with that kind of stuff. So, it's a good way to be. It's a real good way to be. Now, I know I've had clients and friends in the past who I've given this advice to who have real trouble implementing it. They always say, well, I want to fight fire with fire. Well, honey, unless you sit around all day and all you do in your mind and in your deeds is plot against people and scheme and come up with spin, then you're not going to win that argument. So that's a good thing. That means that you're living a fulfilling, happy life where you're able to focus on other things because you're mentally healthy and well. Okay, that's a good thing. Now, I'm not saying you're not smart enough or devious enough to beat them. I'm just saying that you don't sit around literally all day coming up with spin and coming up with lies and coming up with BS, right? So unless that's what you do and that's your job, you're going to lose against this person. So you really need to fight fire with fire in a different way. I know it's satisfying emotionally to explode at the person or to call them an asshole or what have you, but it's not appropriate. It plays into what they are saying. I really want you guys to hear me on this. It plays into what the person is saying about you. If you're somebody who has no problem telling somebody what for, and I know I'm that way, so, if you're that kind of person, narcissists, sociopaths, and cluster Bs are very good at sensing this, and they will use that against you. So you really need to be the adult in the room, and you need to be the person who basically rolls up your sleeves and gets to work. And if that doesn't sit well with you, I really need for you to reevaluate your emotional responses to things and to get those emotions in check so that they don't eat you alive in other aspects of your life. You are a ripe target if you respond emotionally, and you will continue to be targeted. It's that simple. So, keep that in mind going forward. Now, it is absolutely okay to bring up this person's transgressions. However, if somebody, makes, like I said, makes a statement accusing you of not doing your work, not doing your job, etc., you need to get on the ball with that. You need to dismiss that and make sure that doesn't stick in people's minds. If they simply sit around, in a work meeting shooting the breeze and saying how they're getting all this work done when they're not doing it, here's what you can do. You could say something like, wow, again, using the same terminology, wow, that's a really intriguing concept that you brought up. I noticed that you're saying that you've completed this work and that work. Gosh, I haven't seen it, and it seems as if that work has been done, it hasn't been shared with the rest of the company. if you have the facts and figures right here, I'd love to see them. I'll wait while you get those out. Okay? So it's very possible to go on the offensive without being emotional. Same goes for instance, if you're going through like a messy divorce. If you're sitting there in the courtroom, you need to be able to coach your lawyer on this. Now, I've had clients going through divorce with narcissists and sociopaths, and it's really important to have a lawyer who is very well spoken, who is very well versed in this, and I'd like for you to really take the opportunity to coach them if this is what you're going through right now. Coach your lawyer on how to speak to them. Coach your lawyer on that sort of code talk that you need to use, so that when you're in court and the opposing counsel brings up some gotcha issue that's obviously fake and ridiculous, you can immediately say, okay, I'm glad you brought this up. I've been working on this, and this, and I am so glad to be able to provide for my children. I'm glad to be able to be a good influence and a positive role model for my children. Here's how I plan to continue doing that moving forward. And then if they say, well, I've paid this and I've paid that, and they haven't, again, you need to be able to have a lawyer who's fluent and who's able to address these issues and who can say, wow, what an interesting thing it is you just said. Gosh, I'm glad you brought that subject up. So I hear you saying that you've paid this amount of money, in child support. Well, that's very interesting because I have the bank receipts right here and no such money has ever been deposited. I wonder why that is. Maybe you have the facts and figures with you. I'll wait while you get those out. So you need to be able to have a lawyer who's fluent in how to talk to somebody and how to talk to the opposing counsel of the person who is disordered. If your loved one or coworker or boss, God forbid, or what have you, is going on a smear campaign with your friends, and you're noticing again that people are saying, oh, how are you holding up? I hear you're having a tough time, or some such nonsense. You could just say, gosh, that's a really interesting thing you just said. Again, using the same terminology. What a perplexing thing that is you just said. I wonder why you'd say that. So don't ever explain yourself. Don't ever address what was said. Don't ever feel the need to explain yourself. Simply say, gosh, what an interesting thing it is you just said. I wonder why you would mention that. That's very perplexing to me. And that will usually startle the flying monkey support personality enough that it'll slip out that your husband told them that, or your girlfriend told them that, or your mom told them that. And then you'll say, wow, it sounds like mom is going through a really hard time right now. I sure hope everything's okay. So you're going to turn it right around on her, and you're going to say the same thing about her that she has been saying about you. And you're going to do it very seamlessly and very cleverly like that. Wow, yeah, it sounds like mom's going through a really tough time. Yeah, gosh, I really hope she's okay. There you go. And I want to tell you that if you are being approached as a support personality or flying monkey, and if you feel like somebody's coming to you to try to make you part of a smear campaign, it is so important to your integrity that you decline that offer. It is so important to your integrity and to just you being at peace with yourself. So if you're hearing a lot of that kind of thing, oh, I wonder what's going on with so-and-so, or gosh, I hear that, Brad is cheating on Jenna. I really hope Jenna's okay, or something like that. You should always be the person to say, well, I'm sure that Jenna would be very appreciative of you asking after her. Why don't you take her out to coffee? Why don't you take her out to lunch? I'm sure she'd appreciate having a good friend right now. And of course you can elaborate and say it's none of my business what Brad and Jenna are going through. It's not my business. I'm not comfortable discussing that. But I'm sure she'd love a supportive friend no matter what she's going through. Why don't you take her out to lunch? So it's good to turn it around, turn it on its ear like that. And one thing that I've mentioned before in some of my YouTube videos that I say on a very regular basis when people try to come to me and recruit me as a support personality, which doesn't happen too much, but it happens now and again, is I will say something like, I really wonder why you feel so comfortable coming to me and discussing, I'm trying to think of a name of somebody I really don't know. I really wonder why you feel so comfortable coming to me and discussing Ann Smith's personal business. That doesn't feel right to me. And you could even say something, again, a little bit more on the passive-aggressive side, because that's the sort of thing these people respond to. You could say something like, well, if you feel comfortable discussing Ann Smith's personal business, that's fine. It doesn't sit right with me, but I'm not going to judge you. I mean, obviously you just did judge them, but you can say something like that. And, that may actually, hopefully, and somebody who does have empathy, that may trigger that person back into sort of empathy mode, and that may trigger that person to go, oh God, yeah, what I said was not appropriate. Now I'm feeling bad. Boom, there you go. You may have just snapped them out of becoming a flying monkey. So guys, I hope that has helped you a little bit. I hope that this has given you something to think about and some good resources. As I always say, you need to have these tools, not in your toolbox, but in your tool belt, because that is, assuming that the tool belt is always on. Your toolbox is closed. It's probably in your closet or it's off in your garage. But if you have these tools in your belt and you can take them out at any time, you will be well armed, you will be well served, and you'll have some really great boundaries. So I want you to be able to be familiar enough with these tools that you know how to use them, you know which one to reach for at any given time. You take it out very seamlessly, use it, and then you're done. So if you would like to schedule an initial consultation with me, I would be happy to do that. Please feel free to email me at trinitysswellnessandconsulting@gmail.com. Again, trinitysswellnessandconsulting@gmail.com. So, hope this has helped. Be well, put your boundaries up, and rid yourselves of those pesky narcissists and sociopaths and problem personality types. You guys have a wonderful evening and be well.